discuss today, more than we have time for.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the roles of yoga therapy is to connect us to our authentic self. Because we live in a time where your partner, if you have one, can have certain opinions. Your
Mm-hmm.
medical practitioners will have other opinions. Your
Right.
friends, your parents, if you're fortunate to have parents that are solid and in your life, can have other opinions. So that's one of the issues that I faced when I had a baby, is I found that much of the decisions that I was making
Mm-hmm.
were in direct opposition to what everyone around me was making. And I think that if I did not have a self-regulation practice that I did at home every single day, I would have been much more anxious than I was, and I may have forfeited my own intuition
Mm-hmm.
for the sake of satisfying other people's needs, which are their own needs and have actually nothing to do with me or how I'm going to parent my child. But I just really, I feel like we have to start there with yoga as a way to navigate toward, to strengthen the authentic self that can really get shooken up once you
Mm-hmm.
have another little authentic self in your arms,
Mm-hmm.
your belly, in your arms, in your life, in your home.
That's very true. And that's why I like this collaboration that we're doing, because a lot of times I do hear moms struggle with that, with the fact of like there's a lot going on and there's a lot of voices around them that are telling them do this, do that, or you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that, or reconsider certain things. And then the mom is like overwhelmed with like, who do I listen to, right? And the biggest part is we listen within, and what feels right for us, and what feels right for us is the right thing to do. And I think as new moms or even second time or third time moms, we struggle with that. We know we can do this. So I think it is hard. And it's nice that you're creating the space for moms to learn how to use these practices of yoga to be able to make them feel more zen within and feel like they have peace within themselves in order to get things going, right, on their own. So that's awesome.
Yes, and I was thinking about this. I reflect before I had these conversations with friends and colleagues, because they're big
Mm-hmm.
conversations and they're loaded. And something that I notice in my yoga therapy practice with moms, and that's whether it's a new mom, a mom who started having children 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Sometimes a woman will walk in my door and I ask her if she ever practiced yoga before. And she says, yeah, prenatal yoga before I had my baby. And I think, oh my goodness. First, I think, how did you do motherhood without yoga? I think that every time I talk to any mom, because that's my anchor. That is absolutely my anchor. So that's the first thought that comes to my mind. How do you do this
Right.
without having something daily in your life that grounds you and brings you into that authentic self space? But the other thing is that I believe that self-neglect has been normalized as a part of motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Neglect yourself and take care of everyone else's needs first. And so there's a tremendous amount of guilt that comes along with taking care of
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. And I mean, I still experience it, and my son is turning 9, oh my goodness, in
Mm-hmm.
November. But I have found a way to effectively practice yoga every single day of his life, whether he was inside of me or whether he was outside of me. I have not taken a day off of practice. And there's really one reason why I can do that is because the practice is appropriate and tailored to me as the being that I am, a
Mm-hmm.
mom or whatever it is I have in my
And I
life.
think, and I like that because a lot of times moms say, I don't have the time. I don't have the time to practice yoga. I don't have the time to do that. So you're saying that doing this yoga therapy series that you're going to have starting in September, moms are going to be able to develop a way on how to have yoga be a part of their practice, even though they're busy, even though they're overwhelmed with things going on around them, they can still implement it daily into their life once they find out what that practice is with you, right?
100%. That is the
Mm-hmm.
goal. So this is actually the first time, full transparency, because over the years I thought about this. How can we serve
Right.
more of the postpartum community? It's a hard community to serve because
Yeah.
there's a tremendous amount of overwhelm, uh, well visits, and new unexpected events that happen every day in life, and it's very difficult to get postpartum moms to start something new. So I'm going to come
Mm-hmm.
back to the starting something new thing in a moment, but my goal, and so I only work one-on-one with moms, with new moms. That's generally how I've done it up until now. But there are certain categories of individuals who are, even if they're from different backgrounds, even if it's the first child or the second child, who are currently in the same boat. So, this course is for women who are postpartum up until when the child begins to walk. It's yoga for moms. So it's moms yoga. It's not mommy and me. There are people who might do that, but I learned in India where everyone's a mom for the most part, and there is no such thing as mommy and me yoga in India.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nope, that's not how they do it. They do yoga while the child is lying there on the floor, or while they're holding the child, or while grandma is taking a little break and resting with the child. And this was actually one of the questions that I got when I was becoming certified as a yoga teacher trainer. Is so our friend here, her name is Hannah, that was there in India with me. So if you're watching, Hannah, you very much inspired me to be on the postpartum women's health path. She just had a baby. What kind of yoga should she do? What kind of yoga should she do now that she had a baby? And I wasn't a mom yet. And honestly, I didn't really know. I said, do yoga while the baby's napping, which is why I was never able to do that. First of all, there's just too much to do. There's just too much to do. So some people might be able to nap with their baby. That's beautiful. I appreciate that so much. But there are ways to implement yoga into a new mom's life, or in a new mom of a second or third child, that are not out there in the world. They're just not out there because this service is absent, which is why I'm so excited to be now doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
normally we do this one-on-one, but moms who are together in the same boat will sign up for the course. Link is in the bio. They will receive an email from me with an assessment. So we'll meet for 15 minutes online before the course actually starts, so that I could know more about you, because each one of you is more than a new mom to me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have constipation as well, or maybe your appetite is low, or maybe you have low energy, or maybe you've had a C-section or not, or maybe you have high cholesterol. There's so many parameters, which is why one-on-one yoga therapy is my favorite way to do yoga therapy, because it's the most effective. But it's important that you fill out this form and that we meet, so that when you come into our group yoga, postpartum yoga therapy session, we know each other a little bit beforehand. So it will be progressive. We'll start with a simpler practice, and then the practice will evolve over a 12-week period of time. And each week you will actually get to take home a copy. It's a drawing. I'll give you a little example of how we do this. This certainly won't be the practice, but let me get her name out of there for confidentiality. But a practice, that is drawn out for you, that you can take home and you can do at home. And you can do that I mean, your baby won't yet be moving around too much. So, you know, you can do the practice while the baby's sleeping, while the baby's awake. It's meant to be gracefully integrated into your life. And let me tell you, I've taught my child how to respect my personal space by doing that practice around him since day one. So he knows that my mommy takes care of herself and
Right.
that it's essential as a human woman to take care of yourself. So he knows already that this is the way that that we generate health by taking care of ourselves.
Hmm. I love that. And that's part of self-love, right? Which is during this series, I'm going to pop in 2 or 3 times. And one of the things I do love to talk to moms about is self-love and self-care. Because what we find a lot of times is exactly what you said, that we don't take care of ourselves from the beginning. What we find is that everyone else is 1, 2, and 3, and we may be 4. What we want to do is how do we become 1? So that way 2, 3, and 4 can be well off and be better because we're putting ourselves as number 1. So that's one of the things we will talk about is that self-care, that self-love, as well as talking about social isolation. One of the biggest things moms are going through now is a lot of isolation, more than what we originally are prone to because of COVID, right? So usually motherhood tends to be a little bit more isolating just because of the nature of it, right? I got to go take care of my baby. My baby has to go nap. I have to go home. I have to do this. So we isolate a lot of times, but now we're like in a different level of isolation. And that's something we have to address. And I think part of this series, one of the things I really appreciate is that you're allowing the mental health piece come in because yoga helps the mental health piece of it as well. We know yoga is very essential, not only physically, but also mentally. But we need to address those intrusive thoughts we have. We need to address the negative thoughts that pop up in our mind. How do we silence them? How do we accept them? How do we not look at them as something terrible, but be able to say that this is part of what I'm thinking and part of who I am? How do I kind of surrender to it, right? So that's one thing I love that your practice is going to be able to do in addition to the mental health. So the one thing I did want to talk about was how is Mommy and Me different from this kind of yoga therapy? Because I think a lot of moms, like you're right, they go to these studios or places and it's like, you know, Parent and Me, Mommy and Me kind of classes. So a person who's listening to this, how can you make it simple where it's like yoga therapy is this and Mommy and Me is more this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So yoga therapy is learning to take care of yourself with your child there, watching and tending to your child as your child needs you. I mean, that's what we do. It's really our first responsibility when we have this blessing of a child. Mommy and Me is playing with your child for the most part. It's having a nice experience with other moms, but it's very much child focused. Whereas this is having an experience with other moms and it's very much mom focused. We're all here because we're moms. We're all here because we're moms. But this is not a recreational activity. It's really not. It's not. And I understand that Mommy and Me serves a purpose.
Right.
And by
It
all
does.
means, I appreciate Mommy and Me. Like, it's nice to have a light time with other mothers who are in the same stage of life. However, it's not sustainable. And so Mommy and Me is a beautiful experience that you can have. And yoga therapy is an experience that you're doing for yourself. You can always play. You can always get together if you are comfortable and safe with friends and kids, have play dates. This is not a play date. This is really learning yoga, appropriate yoga. And also you get to take it home with you. That is what I love and what I cherish about yoga therapy is my goal is to make you independent. I want you to be independent. I want you to be doing this at home. I want you to be doing it on your own, and I'm going to make it really easy for you to do that. That's what I do with all of my students. generally everyone gets their own. I've never given the same yoga practice twice, and I've been practicing for almost nearing 25 years. What will be different is all of the moms in this course will get exactly the practice that we do on that day. So when you come back a week later, you will be ready to move on, because it won't just have been one time that you do this practice. It will have been multiple times. So it's the difference between self-care and childcare. And we all know that the better we take care of ourselves, the more available we are to be good listeners for what it is that our child needs. So does
What a
that?
good definition. I like that. You explained it so lovely. And it's very clear that we're really focusing on the mother here, right? It's kind of when we talk about postpartum doulas. Postpartum doulas are for moms, right? They're not for the baby. They're there to maybe help out with the baby if needed, right? But it's to take care of mom and mom's well-being. And this yoga therapy is the same thing. It's like children are going to be there. They're going to be part of this practice, but it's focusing on moms. How can they themselves be able to be in a practice that they're going to implement outside of that room, outside of that studio? And you gave me such a clear image, because obviously I've taken Mom Yummy classes before, and yoga Mom Yummy classes. But when I end, my goal is not to do this at home, right? My goal is like, I just had a great time. This was really fun. My child really enjoyed it with me. And then it's like, okay, now what do we do next, right? So it's not, okay, now I go home. How do I implement this with my child? So I like that your yoga therapy really has kind of like a foundation, a format of like, now how do we continue this practice at home? And more like you said, having your child be available and present, that this is mommy's time, right? And getting them used to that, because early on, that's how they learn, right? Since they're little babies, they learn like, oh, my mom always tends to do this practice on her own, and I'm kind of like around playing, doing my own thing, and she comes and takes care of me when needed, but it's her time. And we need more of that. Honestly, we need to show our children that moms have their own time, and that's totally okay. And that goes with the mom guilt that you said. We feel guilty of like, me practicing on my own without my child. They're just playing on their own. Like, should I be doing this? Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and I want to share that even this morning while practicing, I don't ignore my
Right.
child. I don't ignore him. He comes to me. He lays on me. And when he does, I stop what I'm doing, and we breathe together and we hug. And what's going to happen eventually is that child is just going to get up and go.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I had the greatest dose of love of my day this morning when my child came to me in my yoga practice and gave me a hug and just laid there for a minute.
That's so lovely.
Yeah, and then he left. And that's just how we do in our house. That's just how we do. It's how we've always done. So I agree with you that this is such an imperative. Uh, it's such an imperative health generating pattern, and it extends way beyond our own beings. It extends into our children, because they live in our etheric. So our children are an extension of us, and one of the most powerful initial bits of information that I heard at the center that I studied at in India for many years is that women have a special eligibility to practice yoga. And so that opened my ears up very wide. And it is because that if we do choose the path of motherhood, and this freaked me out, I got to be honest, when I first heard it, that baby picks up on everything we experience from the moment it is created inside of our body. Everything we experience. So the reason mothers have a special eligibility to practice yoga is because what we think, what we say, what we feel, how we feel, the baby swimming in that, for better or for worse. And so you know, I'm able to identify some patterns of anxiety that I had with my, had some very severe health issues, both in utero and when he came out, which really necessitated medical interventions and stuff like that. But I realized that my own nervousness surrounding that has had an impact on his behavior. I can still see it now. And so, you know, to have some sense of accountability for how I am and where I am internally inside of myself when I am around my child, and have also the tools to really turn that around so that I can be a calmer, more loving presence, knowing that he is in my etheric, in our bodies, and they are in our energy fields. So knowing that and having the tools to do that really changed the course of my health and enabled me to hold the space as he developed in whatever, and develops in whatever direction he's developing in.
Mm-hmm. That's good. And that's good insight for moms to hear, that, you know, you're not neglecting your child, you're not removing your child from this practice. It's just that you include them as best as you can, right? But the main focus is mom in that moment. And that's really beautiful, I think, that we learn to do those things for ourselves, to take care of ourselves, so that way we can be well and whole, right? So that's great. That's really good to hear. And, you know, you sharing those anxieties is exactly what moms experience a lot of the time, is a lot of fear, because there's a lot of anxieties related to either medical conditions or new discoveries that come up with your child, or even with yourself being a mom of a new child. Certain things happen to our body that maybe needs a medical attention, and fear is built up. And that fear, we want to make sure we have it under control, because we don't want it to lose control of it. And I think yoga therapy is very beneficial in that way, to help us do certain practices to help us ground ourselves in that moment and center ourselves, so it doesn't go in spirals, right?
Yeah, and we have to remember that something like fear it's innate.
Yep.
It's deeply rooted inside of us, and the way to counter it is not to shut it up. So yoga therapy is always a process of building new ways of being in the same body. So how do we counter fear with courage building practices? So postpartum practices are not just for the mind. They really are for the body. I mean, there are certain positions that can make us feel stronger. And that's my physical, from a physical standpoint, you know, my yoga therapy for neck pain course is going to look very, very different than my postpartum yoga therapy course, because we need to make sure my son still jumps on me. He's almost 60 pounds. Like, you know, we need to make sure that we counter. So whether you're nursing or you're feeding or you're on the floor, our posture begins to collapse. So a lot of the positions are aiming to increase the flexibility in our spine this way, strengthen the spine, also shrink the body so the body has expanded, and in order for all the organs to go back to their proper places, the practices that we do in postpartum are actually very shrinking. So from a physical perspective, from a physical fitness perspective even, they're so helpful to regain strength and tone. And you know, we've become over flexible during pregnancy because of the pregnancy hormones, to kind of bring the body back into a place where we can relocate our bodies in the physical space that we reside in. So you know, I think that's another factor. There are so many factors, but that's another factor. I want to emphasize that this isn't, even though we are collaborating and yoga is considered a mental practice, we've taken it out of context in America, but it's a mind-based medicine. So even such, in the postpartum period of life, and in every period of life, but particularly in the postpartum period, we need to practice these types of practices which make sure that the body is shrinking back to where it was, and also that our immune systems are functioning properly because we don't have so much sleep. You know, sleep changes for sure, but that we continue to nourish our immune system, help our digestive system, make sure that, you know, the the womb and the fallopian tubes and the ovaries are all kind of like getting cozy with each other again after having been all over the damn place.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Cool, very good. So I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to address for today, but I'm super excited to be a part of this, and thank you for having me and including, like I said, the mental health piece into it for our moms postpartum. And I think it's essential for moms to be a part of something like this that's not just mental but also physical. So yeah, let's see. Hopefully you join us, right?
Yeah, so yeah, for anyone who's listening, if you and watching and just tuning in today, I want to say that whether you, particularly if you're pregnant right now, or you're giving birth right now, or you've just given birth, I know that the to-do list is extremely long and life becomes very overwhelming. But one of the reasons that yoga therapy works is because we commit to it. And so actually, if we look at the ancient text on yoga, the defining text on yoga, the first word means commitment. So I want to just leave you with this thought that, and plant this seed, that it is, if you can commit to doing this, you've really stepped over the hurdle. The rest will be just coming here and participating in the classes that we do and practicing at home. But it's so important to start, and maybe for some of you, if you haven't practiced yoga yet, because it's geared really toward people who have not practiced yet, or who have not practiced while you are a new mom. If you can take the leap and commit to this, the rest of it will just flow. And I do intend for this to be a life-changing experience for you. So please visit the link in my bio, and we'll soon be all together, and I can't wait. I'm so excited.
You did have some comments on here, so let me read that for you.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Let's see. So it says, Danielle was along my preconception, pregnancy, and postpartum journey priceless. Also, that you helped her during her process. That's awesome. And yoga therapy totally transformed my postpartum healing journey. So there you go. So you have a past client that was a part of that journey with you. And like you said, it was something that helped transform certain individuals from their current practice into something different that served a purpose for them lifelong, I would think.
Yeah.
So that's nice to hear.
Yeah, I mean, this particular student was, I think that best case scenario is we prepare for postpartum before we even become pregnant. So
exactly. That's ideal.
Yeah, so that we are going into this in as stable as a way possible. But I do think that going through this phase of life empowered is the biggest gift that we can give ourselves and our children, our families, and our society. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for having me. And look forward to working with you and everyone else who decides to join.
Yes, excited. Have a beautiful day. See you soon.
You too.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.